No one in the queer desert town of Priskert could have imagined that a starving stray cat would perform a miracle. He wasn't fighting for food, or territory, or survival. He was fighting for someone else's life. When rescuers found him wrapped tightly around a dying bobcat kitten, refusing to move, they thought it was just instinct. But what the vet later discovered would leave everyone in tears, because this was not an act of nature. It was an act of love. Красное сердце. Priskert, Arizona. A quiet desert town where time itself seemed to move slower, wrapped in the golden warmth of the sun. Natalie Miller had lived there 4 years, a 70-year-old widow, soft-spoken, neat, and predictable. Her life had become a rhythm of quiet rituals. Mornings spent tending her scrappy garden, afternoons reading in the shade, and evenings watching the sky fade into apricot and violet. Behind her home lay an open stretch of desert chaparral, wild, untamed, and alive. That's where she first noticed him. A shadow. A stray black cat with ribs pressing against Vichay's dusty fur, a Z-burned green even in daylight, and a silent, almost ghost-like presence. He appeared and vanished without sound, always keeping Vichay's distance. Natalie started leaving out a small bowl of kibru by the lavender bushes, a quiet act of compassion that no one saw. She called him sad, because that's what he looked like, a smudge of darkness against the desert sand. Weeks passed. The cat never came close, but the bowl was always empty by morning. Natalie told tell if it was him or the raccoons, but somehow she wanted it to be him. He seemed so tired, so alone. 10. One blistering July morning, her peaceful routine shattered. She was trimming bougainvillea when she spotted movement near the prickly pears, a flash of black fur under the blazing sun. It was sad, but he wasn't alone. Natalie froze. He was curled protectively around something small, so small she could barely see it. Her first thought was a kitten. Maybe it found a baby from another stray litter. She lifted her binoculars, smiling faintly, and then her heart stuttered. It wasn't a kitten. The tiny creature inside Sam's was spotted, ill-looking, its ears tipped with small black tufts. Its fur was patchy, its body frail. A bobcat kitten. Natalie's breath caught. "What on earth?" she whispered. The baby was crying weakly, not the sharp mull of a horse circuit, but a thin, rasping sound of pain. Sad was frantic, licking the baby's face, nudging Katie, curling around it as if trying to shield it from the burning sun. Every time a bird or insect moved too close, he hissed fiercely, Vichay's frail body standing guard. Natalie's logical mind screamed that she should leave the area alone. Never interfere with wildlife, she remembered. But her heart wouldn't listen. The kitten was dying. Its fur clung to its bones, its breathing shallow, its eyes half lost and crusted. Sad looked equally desperate. He had no food, no strength, yet he was giving everything he had, warmth, care, protection. Natalie stood frozen, watching the impossible unfold. A starving stray cat trying to save a dying wild bobcat. The sun climbed higher, and the little bobcat's cries weakened further. Sad pressed closer, trembling, as if willing Vichay's warmth into the tiny body. Natalie whispered to herself, "Is hugging him too." Her hands trembled. The scene before her felt secret, something beyond instinct, beyond reason. A moment where the laws of nature seemed suspended by compassion. Finally, she set down her shears and made her decision. "I can't just watch him die," she murmured. She turned toward her house, grabbed a towel, a cat carrier, and, almost on instinct, a can of tuna. She was about to change 3 leaves forever. The desert sun had become merciless by the time Natalie stepped back into her yard. The heat pressed down like a weight, shimmering off the rocks, but her heart was pounding too hard to notice. She held a thick garden towel, a mesh carrier, and an open can of tuna that filled the air with its rich, oily scent. Sad spotted her instantly. Vichay's body tensed. A growl rumbled in Vichay's thin chest, a warning, fierce but frightened. Vichay's green eyes blazed, daring her to come closer. "It's okay," Natalie whispered softly. "It's okay, brave boy. I see what you're doing." She stopped 20 feet away. The bobcat kitten whimpered, a sound so faint it was almost just air. Natalie could feel time slipping away. The kitten wouldn't survive another hour in the heat. She popped the lid carefully off the tuna, letting the scent travel on the wind. Sad's growl broke, replaced by a tremor of hesitation. He looked from the kitten, to the foot, to the woman. Chiche's instincts were at war, protect the baby or fit Chiche's starving body. Natalia slowly placed the can on a flat rack 10 feet away and stepped back. Go on, she murmured. You need a tutor. For a long, trembling moment, Saad didn't move. 10, Hon grew on. He crept toward the tuna, every muscle shaking. When he finally reached 80, he plunged Chiche's face into the can, devouring 80 like an animal who hadn't eaten in days. That was her chance. Natalia moved fast, fist attention out by cerebral for a woman horage. She dashed forward, dropped to her knees, and wrapped the towel round the tiny bobcat kitten. The creature was burning up, its body frighteningly hot and light as a handful of DRY leaves. A scream tore through the silence. 80 asked the kitten. 80 was sad. The black cat hit abandoned the tuna and launched himself at her with a desperate yell. Chiche's claws racked her shins, not out of malice but sheer panic. He was protecting Chiche's baby. Imsaue. Imsaue. Natalia cried, fumbling to get the toil-wrapped kitten into the carrier. The latch clicked shut just as Sat lunged there again. She staggered toward her car, clutching the carrier, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sat followed, sprinting, swiping, yelling. He was terrified. He thought she was taking Chiche's free entry forever. Natalia threw the carrier into the passenger seat and slammed her door just in time. Sat lifted the window, Chiche's paw scraping the glass, Chiche's mouth open in a silent CRY. Ah, you poor, brave thing, Natalia whispered, tears burning her eyes. You're trying to save him too. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number for animal control. Current animal control, this is marked. Please help, she gasped. I have a bobcat kitten at his sick dying and here is a stray cat he is chasing in my car. Mark's calm voice steadied her. Stay on the line, ma'am. Where are you? Don't bring AT to the shelter. AT could stress the animal. Drive to the public library downtown. Immediate. Natalia started the engine. Through her rearview mirror, she saw Sat running after her, Chiche's black body a streak of desperation across the dusty road. 2 blocks. 3. Then he fell behind, disappearing into the shimmering heat. By the time she reached the library, her hands were shaking too badly to unbuckle her seat belt. The farmer's market was in full swing. Nearby families, strollers, left travelers to the leafy at moment unfolding beside the arm. She stepped out, clutching the carrier, praying the kitten was still alive. Stay with me, little one, she whispered. Then the unthinkable happened. A skitty bayard clattered past, startling her. The carrier slipped from her hands, tipped open and the spotted kitten, barely conscious, bolted into the crowd. Natalia screamed. Nah, please. Panic erupted. People turned. Someone shouted. Was that a oiled key? And then, through the chase, a black blur shot from the alleyway. Sat. He hit Halad her all the way. The word blurred into chaos. People shouted, scattering in every direction as the tiny, spotted bobcat kitten darted between legs and shopping carts. Natalia's heart thudded painfully in her chest. Nah, she cried, stumbling after AT, her sandals slipping on the hot pavement. She could barely breathe. The crowd was too dense, the noise too loud. Somewhere ahead, a small voice in her head whispered, You've lost him. You've taken him from HAS only protector and now is gone. 10. A sound cut through the noise, a faint, trembling chirp from under a parked truck. Natalia dropped to her knees, ignoring the scrape of asphalt on her skin. She peered beneath the vehicle. There deep in the shadow was the tiny bobcat, trembling, pressed flat against the ground. And beside him, wrapped tightly round the fragile body, was a shape of pure black. Sad. He had found him. Again. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as they saw the 2 cats huddled beneath the truck. A young woman whispered. He came back for him too. Natalie could barely see through her tears. You brave, foolish boy, she breathed. Sad hissed at anyone who came too close, Vichaya's spine arched, Vichaya's body shielding the baby from the giant tires. He looked oiled, feral, but there was something earth-breakingly human in Vichaya's eyes. Fear, devotion, and love. At that moment, an animal control truck pulled up, its flashing lights cutting through the commotion. A tall man in a khaki uniform stepped out. Mark, the officer Natalia had spoken to. He took in the scene quickly, the frightened animals under the truck, the weeping woman on her knees, the curious crowd gathering too close. He crouched beside Natalie. Well, he said softly. You aren't getting. Please, Natalie whispered. Be gentle. The kitten sickened the cat won't leave him to. Mark nodded. He moved Viscom, practiced easy, crashing to the ground. He's there, Phelps, he murmured. Raday, higher. Let's get you out saved. He slid a shallow ball of water beneath that rock. The sound of lapping followed. Then he pushed forward a small syringe filled with meat pasta. The smell reached the tiny bobcat, whose nose twitched. Handgraver came fear. Slowly agonizingly the kitten crept forward. Inch by inch, until the light touched its spotted fur. Sad didn't move. His body was tense, ready to spring at the first threat. But when he saw the bobcat reach the foot, he let his hit, letting the baby eat first. Mark waited. 20 long minutes passed. The crowd stayed silent. Even the noise of the market seemed to fade, as if the dessert itself was holding its breath. Finally, the moment came. The bobcat stepped clear of the truchka's shadow. With one swift, gentle motion, Mark dropped Vichay's net, lifting the kitten safely into Vichay's career. A wail of grief tore from Sad's throat. He lunged forward, claws scraping the ground, as if trying to pull the baby back. But Mark was quick. He shut the carrier door and rose to Vichay's feet. Natalie pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Ah, sweetheart. Sad stood frozen for a heartbeat, staring up at the carrier as it was placed into the truck. Vichay's body trembled, Vichay's green eyes white and glassy. Then the sound changed from anger to heartbreak. It wasn't a hiss. It was a cry. Mark's jaw tightened. You take him to Dr. Allen's clinic, he said. It's closer than the rehab center. This little one needs fluids and a blood test right now. The truck door closed. The engine started. And as it pulled through, the black cat sat in the street, still staring after it. Natalie sank to the curb beside him. Sad didn't run. He didn't fight. He just sat there, trembling his purpose gone. She reached out, voice breaking. Is going to the doctor, brave boy. You did everything you could, Dodge. Sad turned Vichay's head slowly toward her, eyes empty but trusting, and for the first time, he didn't pull away when she touched him. Natalie gathered him gently in her arms and whispered, Come on, Hera. Let's get you home to. The hours that followed were quiet, too quiet. The desert sun had begun to fade into copper and lavender when Natalie sat by her kitchen window, her heart still trembling from the day's chase. In the corner of the room, sat lay curled into a tight ball on a folded towel, silent and motionless. She had given him food, water, even a soft blanket, but he refused to eat. Vichay's green eyes stared at nothing, as if waiting for a small spotted shadow that would never return. The phone rang, startling her. Natalie Miller, a man's tired voice asked. Yes, she whispered. This is Dr. Allen from the Prescott Animal Clinic. Mark just brought in the bobcat kitten. Natalie straightened in her chair. Is he alive? There was a long pause. Yes, Dr. Allen said softly. But, it's bad. Very bad. Natalie pressed the receiver to her ear. Her heart thudded. Dehydration. Worse, the vet replied. We're blood work. The kitten is full of anticoagulant rodenticide. Red poisoned. The words hit Natalie like a blow. Her breath caught. Oh my God. Is bleeding internally. Dr. Allen continued, her voice breaking. That's why he was so weak. It's why his mother probably abandoned him when he was a lost coaster. Natalie covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. And the kid, the black one. Dr. Allen paused again, and when she spoke, her voice trembled. That stray cat, ma'am, he isn't just protecting the kitten. He was keeping it alive. What do you mean? Natalie whispered. The vet took a shaky breath. When we examined the kitten, Vichay's body temperature was only 94 degrees, severe hypothermia. Even in this heat, the poison had wrecked Vichay's ability to regulate temperature. That stray was hugging him to stop the cold. Natalie's eyes widened, her hand trembling against her chest. He knew, Dr. Allen whispered. Somehow, he knew the baby was freezing. That cat was giving him every bit of body heat he had left. That's the only reason the kitten's heart was still beating when he got hurt. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. The silence felt secret, heavy with awe and grief. Then Natalie's voice broke the stillness. Will he make it? You've given him a blood transfusion from our clinic cat and started vitamin K therapy. It's 50-50. But is fighting. Natalia closed her eyes, tears streaming freely now. Tell him he's not alone, she whispered. Tell him he has friends waiting. Dr. Alin's voice softened. We will, ma'am. And, thank you for calling it in. Most people wouldn't have risked helping a wild animal. When the call ended, Natalia sat in silence for a long time. Sad, or rather, smacky, as she decided to rename him, he'd not moved from Vichay's spot. She got up quietly, knelt beside him, and placed her trembling hand on Vichay's back. Is safe now, she whispered. Here helping him. The cat didn't react. Vichay's sides rose and fell in shallow breaths. He was exhausted beyond measure, but Vichay's ears twitched faintly at her voice. Natalia stayed there through the evening, reading her from one of her old books just to fill the silence. That's its tail flicked weakly, a small sign of life. Hours later, as the first stars appeared outside the window, she looked at the curled-up shadow under her table and realized something profound. He had risked everything, Vichay's hunger, Vichay's fear of humans, even Vichay's life, not for survival, but for love. And in that love, she saw something pure and timeless, the kind of compassion that bridges the impossible distance between wild and tame, between despair and hope. Outside, the desert night whispered softly. Inside, Natalia made a quiet promise. If that little bobcat lived there, neither of the RM would ever be alone again. The next few days felt endless. Natalia's home, once silent and predictable, now carried the quiet RHYTHM of waiting. The black cat no longer, sad, but Smaky spent most of Vichay's time under her bed. He wouldn't eat. He barely slept. He simply lay in the shadows, trembling so softly, Vichay's eyes fixed on the empty doorway. Natalia tried everything. Soft food, tuna, gentle words. Nothing worked. It was as if Smaky's heart had been left behind with the tiny bobcat at the clinic. Every morning, she called Dr. Allen. Every evening, she waited for updates. Vichay's temperature is stabilizing, the vet said on the second day. He stood up and ate a little today, she reported on the third. And Natalia would kneel by her bed, reading those updates aloud, as if Smaky could understand every word. Is holding Vichay's on, brave boy, she whispered one afternoon. Is a fighter just like you? For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a sound broke through the stillness, a la, rapper. Smaky crawled out from beneath the bed, thin and trembling, but alive with a spark of something new. He pressed Vichay's head into Natalia's hand. It was the first sign of hope. Day by day, the stray cat began to heal. He started eating again, cautiously at first, then with hunger that spoke of recovery. It sat by the wind each morning, staring out at the desert horizon where the sunlight spilled over the granite hills, as if waiting for someone to return from the wild. A week later, the phone rang again. Natalia's heart jumped before she even answered. M.R.S. Miller. Yes, Dr. Allen. The vet's voice was so after this time, almost tender. He made it. The bobcat's going to life. Natalia's breath caught. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Ah, thank God. Here is more, Dr. Allen continued. Is physically recovered but emotionally, is not doing well. He won't play. He won't respond. He just lies in Vichay's cage. Is depressed. Natalia turned her gaze towards Smaky, who sat by the door, Vichay's tail curled neatly round Vichay's paws. He had been sitting there for hours as if he already knew. The vet hesitated. I've seen this before in rehab animals. Sometimes they form bonds real, deep attachments. You a stray, and this bobcat, they might be grieving each other. Natalia's eyes filled with tears. Then we have to do something, she said. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by papers and a phone book. She called every wildlife rehabilitation center in Arizona, 10 New Mexico, 10 other. Most said no. No domestic animals are allowed. Too risky for the bobcat. Ma'am, it's not protected. But Natalia refused to give up. Finally, she reached a sanctuary outside Scottsdale, a large wildlife rehabilitation center with a dedicated bobcat program. The director, a challenge-aged woman named Sarah, listened silently as Natalia told the whole story from the first day in the garden to the moment Smaky chased her car down the road. When Natalia's voice finally broke, Sarah spoke softly. He saved that babchat's life, she said. He hagged him to keep him warm. Trets, extraordinaire. Kier bot feeding uit each other. Natalie said through tears. And is losing each spirit. They at hers losing each will to life touch. There was a pause. Ten, gently, Sarah replied. It's highly unusual but if the domestic cat is healthy, vaccinated, and neutered, ye take care and bot touch. Natalie's eyes widened. You mean target? Yes. Target. If VHS presence helps the bobcat heal, they can stay that weight. When Natalie hung up, her hands were shaking but this time, not from fear. She turned to Smokey, who had finally lifted VHS hit at the sound of her voice. She knelt, meeting VHS green eyes. Pack you a carriage, brave boy, she whispered. You're going to bring you a friend home.